Now this is where I want to move on to Carrier Strike, because this game mode, they fumbled this game mode so hard. It still makes BF4's version, which is over a decade old at this point, still look like a masterclass in naval carrier assault warfare. I just don't know how they've managed to fumble the bag this hard. The concept is brilliant, okay? You've got 2 aircraft carriers, land, air and sea warfare. You've got capture points across the map itself. Players fight to control those capture points. The AA points on those capture points will basically fire at the carrier once taken, and once players have damaged the enemy carrier enough, that basically opens up the opportunity for players to attack the enemy carrier, eventually board it and destroy the internal objectives. So again, looking at it on paper, that is pure battlefield, okay? That mode needs to be in this game, and this is where the comparison with Battlefield 4 becomes basically unavoidable. One important distinction to make is that BF4's version of Carrier Assault basically launched across 4 different unique naval strike maps: Lost Islands, Nashar Canals, Wavebreaker and Operation Mortar. Each map here was distinct and unique and gave the fucking map pack DLC so much flavor. It's genuinely incredible what they managed to give us over a decade ago at this point. I need to remind you that this is over a decade ago. We compare this to BF6's version, and ultimately it's just one fucking map. Carrier Strike is basically reintroduced onto a map they already gave us at the beginning of the season, and it's just poorly executed. Carrier Assault in BF4 had a very clear structure. You begin with a large-scale combined arms battle. Both teams started on their carriers and basically raced towards the map. The objective, again, was to capture and control points associated with the missile launchers on the map. Those launchers would automatically fire at the opposing carrier, damaging its hull. Eventually, when the carrier became vulnerable, the mode transitioned into the assault phase. That transition was crucial, okay, because the map basically turned from conquest mode into rush mode at that final assault towards the carrier, okay? The match completely changed. The focus moved away from controlling the wider battlefield and towards assaulting the enemy carrier. The capture points on the map ceased to exist, okay? You could not control points anymore. This basically meant that every player on the map was forced to attack the enemy carrier. That was the final assault. Every player was engaged in the battle at that point. Players could assault the enemy carrier by means of transport vehicles, by naval approach, by parachute, and then eventually fighting their way inside. Once inside, the objective was to destroy 2 MCOM stations. Once destroyed, the carrier's destruction providing the final victory condition. Okay, so that whole structure gave Carrier Assault an actual narrative. You weren't simply playing conquest mode on water. You were progressing through the battle, and then you fought for the map, then you broke through the enemy carrier and you stormed that carrier. The whole match basically felt like one big escalating operation. It felt alive, it felt real, it was fucking epic. Right, so again, we want to compare this with BF6's version of the Carrier Strike mode. The biggest problem with BF6's implementation is that the game takes the basic idea but doesn't create the same strong transition between phases. The match starts between both teams on their carriers, and they love to use these fucking cinematics. Okay, so you spawn on the map, you get to see this cute little intro cinematic of your characters on the carrier. You compare that to BF4, we had a tactical HUD display so you could see the overview of the map. You get to spawn at the deck along with your vehicles and such, and you get to pick which vehicle you want to spawn on. They've sacrificed that for this unnecessary animation phase. That's ignoring the fact that they have a fucking intro cutscene to this whole fucking game mode. If you have to force me to watch this cutscene every time I play this map, that's annoying. That's very frustrating. So there's problems even there. So at this point, players are sprinting frantically to whatever vehicle they can get to. That is if you aren't killed by the fucking vehicle for some reason. That I don't know if that's a bug or what, but yeah, as you can see in one of my playthroughs, I managed to land underneath the boat and the boat fucking crushed my ass. So again, we seem to have a problem with the fact that the presentation is kind of interfering with the gameplay. It's like these unnecessary additions to the game which are really slowing things down, and it just seems unnecessary. Every match has to begin with some kind of cinematic sequence. Yes, you can skip the cutscene, but does it need to be there? Do we need to see this Top Gun shit all the time? Why does it need to be in the game? Again, I need to briefly touch on that because that pissed me the fuck off. The Top Gun shit, why did we waste so much time and resources on that? You know, I don't really need to see this man's fucking pubescent mustache every time I load the game up. That said, the cinematics look great. It doesn't necessarily feel efficient. And that distinction is becoming increasingly common in Battlefield 6. So you finally managed to get yourself a boat and you head towards the island. The next phase is supposed to be the battle for the capture points and the AA missile positions. The problem is that the battlefield is incredibly spread out on Suru Reef. Getting between objectives can feel really slow. You spend a lot of time traveling through open water, and unlike the better Battlefield 4's version of Carrier Assault maps, the whole thing can feel geographically disconnected. Okay, this is where the 4-map structure of Naval Strike becomes really important. Battlefield 4 again had 4 different unique naval focused environments designed around the mode. A BF6, again, it's giving you one map which we already had. It's Suru Reef. Okay, so I don't know why they've organized this into a fucking neat spot onto the roadmap, because it's not a unique mode. It's basically the same map. It's a single dedicated environment, and they just added 2 new carriers on there. Okay, and the fact that we have to play the same map over and over again with this specific game mode, it can make the whole thing feel really repetitive, and it gets boring really quickly. Okay, you've got a brilliant concept trapped inside one play space. Once you've learned that play space, you've basically learned the entire game mode. This is a problem with longevity, okay, because this doesn't have any longevity, especially when EA has confirmed that the Carrier Strike is not immediately planned to remain a permanent game mode. This is an LTM. The developers say they will first assess how the mode resonates with players and can potentially rotate it or bring it into additional maps depending on feedback. I don't think that's very likely, depending on the space of the other maps in the game, considering that Wake Island is possibly the only fucking map with any substantial amount of space for 2 carriers. Okay, so rather than launching a fully established mode with multiple maps, BF6 is effectively forcing players to use the maps that's already in the fucking game, Suru Reef, and it's just boring. We've already played it. The biggest flaw with this game mode I've experienced so far, apart from this being one recycled fucking map, Suru Reef, is that once the carrier has been sufficiently damaged, the game opens up the possibility of boarding. Now, the problem here is that in BF4, each carrier had AA guns. Okay, these AA guns were automatically manned, so any aircraft that would feel comfortable enough to try and fly over the carrier and bomb it would get blitzed by the AA guns, the miniguns that were already on the carrier. Again, these were automated. Players couldn't use these. They could in BF3. That said, we don't have any automated miniguns on the carriers in BF6. That means enemies can board carriers at will whenever they want to. This is a problem because now players can land on our carriers and fucking sabotage it with mines, sit there and camp at the peak of the fucking ship with a fucking RPG and take out our vehicles. You can see me doing it right here. And this is a gameplay design choice. Okay, I have to ask, you have a fucking labs group. How did this slip through the net if you are playtesting this game mode? Genuinely baffling what they're doing. The whole thing combines to make this feel like it's not properly tested. Like, how did you release this game mode? It's shocking. We have enemy players literally running around wreaking havoc on enemy ships, and it just fucks the whole mode up. The other problem here is the fact this all creates a strange situation where the carrier is vulnerable while most of the team are still fighting elsewhere on the map. Okay, so for example, once an enemy carrier's hull has been breached and is now exposed for boarding, capture points on the map are still active. That means players are left stuck on the island while the hull is being breached by a small squad of commandos. And it's like there is no final naval assault. All of that is missing. And so the final assault can basically feel like 5 guys versing another squad on the fucking enemy carrier, and they basically just run through the objectives and the game's over. There is no final push towards the enemy carrier. This whole scenario is completely missing in BF6. Okay, players are still stuck on the fucking island capturing objectives for some reason. Again, it reinforces the perception that the game mode isn't fucking complete. It wasn't thought out and they haven't completed it. So instead of getting that final spectacular final assault phase, the mode should be building towards, you end up with a handful of players infiltrating the carrier while everybody else is still fucking messing around on the outer battlefield. This makes the final assault feel anticlimactic. You want the entire match to converge on the carrier. You want the moment when the carrier is being exposed to become that holy shit moment where the carrier's open, everybody's over there, and it's that final assault. But what it's basically condensed into is 3 people attacking the fucking carrier, and it's like the whole team just do not have the transport to get to the carrier. They're literally stuck on the fucking island. So ultimately that destroys the drama, and Battlefield 4 understood that the carrier assault was supposed to become the climax of the match. EA's own explanation specifically describes carrier assault as a 2-stage experience, beginning with map control and ending with the carrier attack. That distinction matters. The end game should not merely be another objective appearing on the fucking map. It should fundamentally change what everybody is doing. So again, it's just they fumbled the bag with this game mode. It doesn't feel complete. It's shit's missing and it's all over the place. Again, boarding the enemy carrier creates more problems. Okay, players can get onto the enemy carrier throughout the battle. This should not be a thing in the fucking game mode. Okay, that creates opportunities for players to hijack vehicles, sabotage the enemy, attack spawns, and generally interfere with the other team. I'm just not seeing how this is tactically balancing the game mode. There's a difference between our team has infiltrated the enemy carrier as part of a coordinated attack and just 5 random dudes currently inside the enemy carrier while everyone else is doing something completely different. Basically just fucking up shit for the enemy team. That's not how the game mode should be. And this is really the problem with Carrier Strike. It has all of the ingredients, but the ingredients aren't always being assembled into one coherent meal. The game mode is just disconnected. It's all over the place. It's all fucked up. And again, it's like they haven't fully balanced the game mode. Nothing is coming together.
Objective Alpha. Medic! Stay with me!